Well, this is a very powerful work that's inside you. Yeah. And it's far more powerful than an individual because it's the law, you see. Yeah. And it's our upholdedness of this, yeah. So that's what it is. I'm just situating ourselves, and I've been on the road and just sort of getting organised for our show here today. I was thinking that it would really be good for us to do a show, and let's call this A Knot Tied Without a Rope, and thinking outside the box. How's that, Lukey?
You can call it whatever you want. I know that it's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we'll call this a knot tied without a rope, and thinking outside the box. And I reckon that as people can tune into the shows that we've done and be continuing to tune into our shows, I have a feeling that we've got a beautiful sequence that we're doing and that we're building things. Yeah. Yeah. So are we still with our sound and everything, mate?
Sound is fantastic.
But I think that everybody would agree that it's really important to be able to think outside the box, and that fear has had caused many responses, for people to have survive, and even including, a response of having been in a bit of a trance of amnesia or something, where there's been a bit.
Dr. Job, you still there?
You there, mate? You there, mate?
Yeah, still here.
Oh, you're there. I think you're going to have to pay attention to that a bit. Where I am, it just is this microphone. Hopefully I'm really doing what I can to make sure our sound is good. So if the sound goes out, you'll just have to get straight back to me, all right? Yeah. You really could say that a key point just for us to keep in our mind is that negative is being set up in our brain a little bit more to be velcroed, and then you've got to have a bit of a vigilance, and this vigilance is eye awareness. And as you're having this eye awareness, it's possible really to be able to be more dehypnotized. But Tavistock, that we've been talking a little bit about, really is very much sort of into all the mind control, which we'll talk about. And eye awareness really is being able to be dehypnotized. And eventually we're going to be able to get to some questions and answers about eye awareness, and then being in eye awareness in a field where there's eugenics is sort of being put by Tavistock, and then learning how to be in your original self, clearing away the stuff which isn't you. So it's sort of really about uncreating, all the stuff that's been created, which is all sort of not really integrated or congruent. But we've been talking just a bit, Lukey, about how news, other than being sort of excellent, and then people having thought about news of the world being less than excellent, and then they related their whole self to that news and things, which is that silly. Tavistock would love that. That's kind of really what they would love, But you're not equivalent to that at all. This, which we're talking about, really is an orderliness, and we can see that things are many, many factored in the causedness to be sort of more uncaused, and certainly not caused by just any one single sort of thing. Which there is really only subjective reality. If you could say that's reality, it's only really subjective. It really is not objective truth. There we go. All truth really is subjective because it involves perceptions and things and precognitive commitments, in the way the mind has been set up to perceive information around. And in neurology, that's called a precognitive commitment. And, for instance, mosquitoes in a tank of glass walls and ceiling for a few hours have learned to miss the glass to protect their wings. The glass is removed, and except for, several brave souls that can venture out of the glass, most all of the mosquitoes would remain in that spot, and a precognitive commitment has been formed for them to have coded the world for that dimension and that space only to exist, and that there was something that existed there they couldn't see, that they would have ordinarily been able to fly straight through, but the glass stopped them, and something they couldn't see. But their life is equivalent to the wing length of the life of their wings. So to preserve their wings, they ended up with a bit of a dimension inside of what the space was, and to avoid any more collisionness and things, the brain had become coded to perceive the world in a set way. That's called a precognitive commitment. And then you've got paradigms, which paradigms are sets of rules which cause you to interpret the world around you in a set way. And then what we're doing is teaching you about eye awareness so that it's possible for you to prevent limited brain function and Alzheimer's and learned helplessness and that sort of thing, which apparently could have affected eventually everybody, 1% sort of every day of your energy and being. And then, in the native tradition, medicine really is your intention. And that's equivalent to you having the ability to be a bit more in control of your aging instead of just it out of controlledness and, amazing that you can survive given all the stuff that goes into the body and what you're doing, right? So somebody's got to be looking after that little one, and that's you. And you really should be, you know what I mean? And this is about your voice inside, not something outside being imparted at all. This is about getting this going more inside you and your voice, all right? Yeah. So eye awareness really is equivalent to you being more of your reduced fatigue, and being and having more your electrics available to you. So, you have to renounce the stuff that's not working, and you really have to be giving and be in your balance, and 50% of yourself empty and 50% of yourself caring. And mindfulness is really being able to do what you're doing and get this done that you have in front of you before you're entertaining something else. Yeah. So far we've just sort of been going over things, and just to keep in your mind a couple of things. One would be that pleasure neurologically inhibits aversion. And whilst aversion could have been there, memory learning and behaviours could have been state-specific with anxiety, because all memory learning and behaviour could have been conditioned to negation. And so then I'm just caring very much for you to be awoken to syntax going on inside, so you can have more choice, and you can stalk things to change your destiny, and you can make physical more something which is a dream. And when you're doing this, you're really doing what you can to sort of really be more in eye awareness. Yeah. A headache that people could have had, and cardiovascular challenge, and infection of the skin, and susceptibility to disease and things, pain, fibromyalgia, repetitive strain and injury, diabetes, infertility, shorter life, all of the leading causes of death and susceptibleness to death is affected by the degree to which you have an inner calm or not. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here in eye awareness, and we're talking about being able to be more in a social world and accepting what's social, and rejecting the things which is not really social. Yeah. But if people always have had to have in the moment now sort of being represented by an turn on you or an turn on me, and you, other than representing yourself, you're not presenting things in yourself. Wow. How did the world get to that? But that is a fiction, having to, then you've got to have been joined to be a fiction yourself, and so you've got to have been made into a beast, and then you would have agreed to that, but you just have agreed because of default. But no living spirit can be joined to a fiction, because a maximum of law is you can only join like with like. But if you have treated a rat as, I think the way you've treated rats maybe is the way you could have treated yourself, and why is not everything around you not something of yourself? Because that's what we're talking about here. A conditioned, vicarious sort of learning, where people could have had a learned helplessness, put upon them eugenically, and then things to have been triggered 10,000 times in the past by amygdala function and tegmentum, and your memory learning and behaviour having only been state-specific with anxiety, you see. So we're talking about the physiological effects of stress on a living spirit, and choice being taken away by all of the victimless crimes people are being held to, and all monies and their freedoms taken, and everything sacrificed to the court, right? Yeah. So, and nobody's in charge, just a phantom. And our people's allowedness of that. All right. Well, you really, you've got books, about assisting people at least become aware that synthetics are poisons. And like there's a book like Trudeau, and it's like a beautiful soft waffle, and as deep as the boy can go in his work, is Pavlo Airola's juice fasting, and that's about it. But that's nice, isn't it? But it just shows that can be very rarely aware of anything else in the movement, because very little mentioned in his book. That's a book of Trudeau out at the moment. But it's a bit of soft waffle, but nice, and you've got in there, meat, ostrich and bison and salmon and grass-fed and chicken and krill. Woo-hoo-hoo. Wow. That's the state of it. All right. But studies on the living spirit really does involve more a qualitativeness and not just a quantitative stupidity, like you've got calcium in kale, so therefore people need calcium, so eat kale. What they don't tell you is that it's got a negative calcium ratio. So it's just test tube science. But for instance, the psychological tests, in these family courts, they have all these psychological tests, and they reckon they're objective, and what a load of bull dust. It's the biggest subjective crap I've ever seen in my life. You've got morons like people walking around a bit like moon-struck cows, and they certainly, like in the courthouse, in the family courthouse in New York City there, the Southern District that I saw, they were all walking around like moon-struck cows. I guess they do know they were working in a slaughterhouse, you see. Yeah. But they'll have a little test like, you can be going through as a father and being retaliated against, right? And then they'll ask you, tick the box, yes or no. Are you a liar or are you not? And so, you tick the box, you're not a liar. And then they'll say, ha, 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 ha. So, you said you haven't lied. Oh, wow. Well, there you go. You're on a scale of how you answered that question, and that's it. You're fixed. It's the weirdest thing in the world, and completely unscientific. God help us. And then they'll run on something like that. It's completely subjective and totally not objective, and shamefully they can't be sued. How's that? It's like the worst sort of mental you could think, of a Nazi camp there, that they run. They're taking children, and the papers there in New York, as everywhere, are owned by Rupert, who, he's not in control of his own anything, and no one is except the Count for all that, But stress could have got under a person's skin, and unless you've got the ability to dehypnotize yourself and relax, and you know that you're not all of that, all the news and everything that Tavistock puts out is really designed to cause you to have been more in your reptile brain, like those people are, who put all that stuff out there. But it's all the stress under your skin, sort of, and that a young, reasoned, inhibited centers are not formed. So you've got inhibitory centers that are supposed to be formed more so that you can have a reasonness about things, and children and people can be introduced to stuff which an adult and a parent would never really do that, and then who's in charge, mate? The government? God help us, excuse me. Who would want to put their child to that? Anybody who puts their child to have been to that, which no one I know does. All these kids are kidnapped, mate. Yeah. And they are drugged more. Yeah, they are. They're drugged more and everything. So where did you get the information that it's better that kids might not be with their family, eh? Yeah. But you know what? Yeah, you can just be putting all the crap around, but you've got to really do what you can to know that you're not all that, and you do have a power inside yourself, and just go beyond making soap, if you're into cooking, and go beyond high tannin food and all the undigestible protein and run away sugar and things, but you've got 3 million organisms per square centimetre of bacteria in flesh. That's about as much as you've got underneath your fingernail, which even sterilised hands have that underneath their dirty fingernail, but it's not, it's clean. But there's 3 million organisms per square centimetre in a bit of flesh, like a bit of chicken or fish or an egg or something. 1.5 million per square centimetre in dairy, just wriggling around. Then you've got only about 10, that's all, and a bit of vegetation. You've got very high phosphate food, high oxalic acid, and extremely low calcium sort of in relationship sort of food, and that's being fed people. See, it's dead, soggy cardboard, all right? Yeah. But anyway, learned helplessness could have been just a whole range of excitatory sort of neurotransmitters and acidity and no inhibitory neurotransmitters and inflammation of the gut and the momentum where a lot of this is made is because of inflammation not really being present much. And then people are walking around, and God help us how they can survive, but they have an enormous amount of gas usually in their stomach, which rises to their head through the day. But then a person's ability to be able to reset their temperature, they get cool, cold, and they can be overheating, where serotonin deficiencies can have been. But no necessary increasedness by a number of reporting and number of living sort of through earthquakes and things, which, that's a part of the news that Tavistock puts. And that's not you, though, you see. But why shouldn't you also really be aware of everything? But that's not you. It's just something, but not everything. But no observational reference point being made for something to begin with. How could you say that you've known something because you didn't even have an observational reference point to begin with? But if you're like a caterpillar, that's ending up as a butterfly, but seismic activity going up or down really is in relationship to something, and we're going to be talking hopefully in our program more about Nibiru and where Nibiru is, because people have been asking me what's up with this, so we need to get to that at some point. But they are coming, just not when. And animals react certainly to the P wave, the pressure wave, thump, and they often are able to move away from, be safe sort of, before and so they're able to escape and have no damage. And then 10 seconds they did all that beforehand, and then the damaging surface wave sort of comes. But animals really are definitely more tuned into their beingness, and how come humans, why should we not ever be more this way too? But the ring of fire in the Pacific really is vibrating, and every night I lay down on the earth, I can feel the earth moving and waves of energy going through the earth as I'm laying down on the earth here where I am, you know. And the Ring of Fire on the Pacific, I can really feel it unbelievably moving, and it's still giving rise to the most striking earthquakes and things. And we've got to be able to deal and clear away catastrophobia and clear away all of the phobias and things, you know. But catastrophobia is something that's being used by Tavistock just to cause people to other than be, you know, a whole brain functioned. But could a network of drones, you know, people could just be sort of distracted by all stuff like that, couldn't they? News like that coming out, Reuters. A network of drones are going to be the war's first responders. Something has to be done, and humans can't. So, you know, mechanization, and that's got to be beyond you. Must be some sophistication out there. And now you can have a thought flow once and for all time to be aware that information that's being put out there is something but not everything, and is subjective extremely, all right? Yeah. And so I'm asking us to really be a little bit more having a critical ability to be able to think for ourselves and be more eye-aware. But if you taste your food and you're in live food, you've made your food with a coconut that really doesn't have any water in it because you've been listening to me for some time, and your food shouldn't taste like soap at all, but oil and potassium can combine to make a soap, and so people could be eating things that actually did taste sort of soapy, really, you know. But cashew, banana, carrot juice, cane juice, unsprouted grain is equivalent to raw and living food, and sprouted grain is equivalent to living food, but not raw food necessarily, but certainly not live food, all right? But if it was a seed, then it would be sprouted as live food. But you've got a lot of saponification, which is soap making from oil. Even people who do oil painting can have learned a lot about that saponification having occurred to paintings and the oil painting and things. But most people in the movement of nutrition, you know, they, as I said, they don't even really know what a fruit or a vegetable is, or even today they can have left out categories of fruit recently more because they're teaching people to be leaf eaters and grass eaters, but no category for fruit. Instead of taking away all the dead food and educating people about live food, it's just, let's coin something else. Let's call it super, and let's just add it into the mix, you know what I mean? And you've got a lot of excessive tannin in spirulina and barley and wheat and cocoa. You've got 2.5 million tons of cocoa shipped worldwide last year, and it's ruining the earth, God help us. Sorry about that, but it is. You've got consume to gratify and foodies and useless eaters being talked about. You've got tannins, 7,400 parts per million, cocoa per 100 grams. That's wicked. That's wicked. I don't know how you're going to deal with that. But anyway, might be nice. But you've got a calcium and phosphorus. It's like Ca, Ca and Ka, calcium and phosphorus. It's all gets bound by the tannins, and Ca really, as a word, is equivalent to SH1T in most of the world, you know. Extraordinary quality cashew and peanut and legume. They all lie on the ground unbroken down for years, you know, until they could have gone through their enzyme inhibitor but it's certainly not a food, really for a human. So, you've got childhood stress causing learned helplessness and behavioural patterns, and you've got a count who've taken away everyone's common law rights except left it there in your right to contract, and you have a right to contract, and they can't stop you from doing that. And then you do have your common law rights there in Uniform Commercial Code, that's all. But otherwise it's a kangaroo court, and family court is typically a slaughterhouse. But you've got good people, don't you? Some percentage, but might be few. But the system's messed up bad because there really is lots of retaliation in cases like this, and because you have no remedy for that, you have your rights. Our rights are not being upheld. But if you've got Obama saying, "Let's have reform. We would bring the greater good together and have competition and choice in savings and inefficiencies," and so sometimes words are sometimes a little bit not right, to our healthcare system. It's all, nice Jesse Jackson sort of stuff, normalising unspecified verbs and missing referential indexes and things. And less informed content, really. But and then people can really have made errors, and but they're held by their press release, which is a bit silly, isn't it? Like Al Gore, he always gets held because he said a zebra didn't have ever ability to change its spot, but that's a leopard. But anyway, rather than the zebras have stripes. But a lot of energy in the papers and in Tavistock is to just put money into ambulances to take people away from the bottom of the cliff. But to have savings in that level, that's not right. You know what I mean? In a goat jumping on top of another goat. See, so you've got Mitt Romney, who was saying, "Gee, vote for me." That's an old story. But then he says, "Well, you know what? I should let you tell my story." Wow, he said to all the unemployed people he was talking to, he goes, "Guess what?" He says, "I'm unemployed." There you go. He said, but of course he's got 200 mil in the bank, or is worth something like that. So it's quite sort of funny a bit. These are all bottom of the cocky's cage stuff. Very nice people. But they're not in charge, but just sort of puppets. But then isn't anybody unless you can have dehypnotized yourself. But childhood stress could have left genetic scars, and a field could exist which power has to be within. And so then you don't might necessarily have the ability to get everything done necessarily, but what you do and you can inside is what counts. But abused children could be controlled by control freaks, by leaving, by being aloof, by being shut out, by not talking, is the biggest form of violence. Second is by being distracted and
he'll be back.
Lukey?
Yes.
You there? Sorry, mate.
Right here.
Oh, sorry. How much time do we have, mate?
And distraction.
Well, you've childhood stress leaves genetic scars. you've got children that are being abused by controlledness, and then humans are being controlled as cattle, and the living spirit is being put to be a human, which is like a chattel. But that this eye awareness is you becoming more unhypnotized, all right, and uncreating all the stuff. But all of that abuse, having taken on the victor's role, and just having had a trauma reenactment syndrome and recognizing that, you could clear things away, you see. Otherwise, the tips of chromosomes, that they can all have these telomeres, and they all become short, and children who could have been abused, and like Dakota, who at the moment, everybody has done everything they can to make sure that boy doesn't have his daddy, you see? Yeah, and so he even's going around like his daddy's dead, and they don't even have the sense to know what the meaning of that is. But such morons, but I forgive them because they just do not know what they're doing, you know what I mean? But stress creates the tips of telomeres to have shrunk, and aging and disease is linked to all of that, what I've been talking about, and preventing from unraveledness the telomeres do. And there's things one can do to learn how to clear all of this up, but get rid of all the stress and be more eye-aware. But the limits of time and cells can reproduce faithfully, protein and things, really does cause children to be fat, diabetes to be present, dementia and fatigue, and not being able to wake up in the morning. And all the, these people, right, they haven't thought about the child, they don't often, hug the kid, he's over there, not even in the courtroom, actually. And it's just an extremely heady, ridiculous, reduced to word. Wow. And the totality is reduced to some moron's word. How's that? Wow. But anyway, physiological injury is a medical battery. And injury, and people are doing that, they should be frightened of what they're doing, because they've caused conditions to be that causes a loss of intimacy, all right? So parental alienation is where the child's other than able to express her or his affection to their parent, and then you have just gone along with that. And then people have their heads in the sand, like they put their head in the sand, they think, oh, you know what, if my head's here, apparently I won't see it, so it's gone away, Are you there, Lukey? Lukey?
Dr. Job, I'm shaking the sand off my head.
Oh, okay, so thanks so much, mate. Time passes by so quick as we do our program, But you've got a physiological injury of abandonment. You've got vaccinated against Dakota's will, vaccinated in his legs, that he had such knots in his legs that was twice as big as his little hand folded up, you know what I mean, in his legs. There had no medical information passed on and no personal information passed on. And you've got ACS just like running amok, taking kids away, and you've got people like idiots in New York City in that family courthouse running amok and taking kids away. See, there you go. And no oversight. So you've got to have protocol to follow. You do, and if you don't, that's not right. And none was followed, zero, by ACS, which is, and these child pimp services. Because I was concerned about boys being sexually mutilated in New York, I had a policewoman who was helping me And because I'd said things like that, she said I was a kook, and I was screwed after that because that woman said that. And my boy as well. But anyway, multiple factors, are often present. And it's a phantom that runs the show. There you go. And, and that's nice. That's just the way it is. You have a peace inside, and there's a beauty. The world is a beauty, and this is a form of beauty, really. But shame and contempt is just a development of a false self, you see, and a trauma reenactment, and failure to thrive as what they did to Dakota. But these kids fail to thrive, mate. And show me the statistic right now of any child who's taken from their mother and their father. Come on, show it to me. I'd like to see it. Where a child does not thrive when that occurs. These are people who are heady. They're roughs, mainly. Roughed, white upper-class females in their head. And it's all right. Everybody, even in nutrition, might not have the answer, and certainly roughs don't. But people can have their brains roughed. And Susan Knips and, Joan Tannenbaum, and let's see, Kevin Lapp, and these are people, they're just lap dogs and Dalma, yeah. But they're acting that way. But they're someone's baby, but they're in a system which is just like a slaughterhouse, yeah. But the government as perfect is bull-daft, all right? Right? Isn't it? Right? The government as perfect is bull-daft, and certainly that courthouse as perfect is bull-daft, as perfect is bull-daft, and certainly that courthouse as perfect is bull-daft, as perfect is bull-daft, and certainly that courthouse as perfect is bull-daft,